they're sitting in the comfy chairs, they've got the pajamas on and the glass of... Why aren't we at home doing that? Anyway, so they're watching on the Zoom that we've got being broadcast. If you all turn and wave to the screen at the back, wave at them at home. Great, thankfully we can't see them, so that's all right. So a lot of the questions might be coming in from Zoom participants as well as from the floor and ones that have been sent in advance. Being a local councillor is really tough. It's one of your neighbours who's stepping forward for this challenge. It's little or no pay. It's impossible for them to keep everyone happy. And they're in charge of some really critical decisions about our lives. Probably local government affects our day-to-day life as much, if not more, than national government. The London boroughs spend more than £15 billion a year, which includes £7 billion on education and £8 billion on core services. So adult social care, £2.7 billion. Children's social care, £1.8 billion. So that's more than half of the revenue spending. They own and maintain nearly 500,000 homes. That's 1 in 7 houses in London. It's a local authority. They deal with the libraries, they're planning applications. They're responsible for waste collection and licensing the pubs, clubs and restaurants. They repair and maintain 95% of all our roads. They're dealing with parking enforcement and they pay over 300 million a year to allow older and disabled Londoners free travel on buses, tubes and trains. They also deliver environmental services, including consumer protection and many arts and leisure services. They register when you are born, when you get married, and after you've gone, they can bury you too. During COVID lockdown, there was an amazing sense of community, I think, that sprung up. Everyone was looking out for each other in the streets. How can you help? How can you do something for your neighbours? And I really want to kind of capture that spirit of listening and talking to each other this evening. There's a quote that says, the biggest communication problem is that we do not listen to understand, we listen to reply. So tonight, I just want to try something very, very quickly. I just want you to introduce yourself to somebody who's sitting nearby that you do not know. So turn to them, tell them who you are, and then tell them the best thing about your neighborhood, the one top thing, your top thing. And everyone at home on Zoom, if you could put it in your chat. Candidates can introduce themselves. Okay, we got the best things. Thank you. Boy, have we made a lot of friends this evening. It's better than Tinder, really. Okay, somebody who's just been listening, shout out what their newfound friend's best thing about Herne Hill, the neighbourhood, is. Just quickly, anybody. What? People, anything else? The park, good. Shops, good. Market, good. Picture, brilliant. So there's actually a hell of a lot there. I mean, nobody disagrees with all of them. So we've got a lot more in common that we agree with than we disagree. So that's really important. Okay. I'm always interested in how effective Hustings meetings are. So could you, little show of hands, when you came in this evening, could you put your hand up if you were pretty certain who you're going to vote for on May the 5th? Could you put your hand up if you are undecided? What if you're to play for? You can go. All right, that's good. We should also have a... Okay, all right, we'll have that. No problem. Because that's coming up. All right, so we'll go into the format for this evening. One candidate from each party, from each ward, will do a 2-minute intro. We've got some of the candidates up here. We have all the others down the front here. They will swap as and when necessary. They might delegate one of their fellow candidates to answer a question on their behalf. So just so you know, the aim is to make certain that everyone gets to see as many of the candidates as have questions at the audience to ask it when they can. If not, I will do it on their behalf. We will be taking questions from the floor, and we will be also taking all those at home. Hello, Zoom question. Done as possible. That's something else at the very end for everyone. So that's the format. Okay. Over on the Lambeth side, I don't have any candidates from the Conservative Party this evening. So the group party of Lambeth to do your 2-minute intro. So we've got the timer down the front. You'll get 20 seconds, then you get the rugby tackle to the ground. You've gone on too long.
To test out the mics as well.
Yeah.
This one, can you hear me?
Garrett, you okay on the mic?
Is that fine? Shall I test again? Oh, what about in the room? I feel like I drew the straw here.
That's it. That's great.
There we go. Okay. All right. Good evening, Herne Forum. I'm Nick Christian. I'm here representing myself, Celeste Hicks, Paul Valentine, and Lambeth Green Party. I am a private renter who lives at Dorchester Court, just on top of Herne Hill. My home has been mistreated by its landlord for decades and largely ignored by Lambeth Council for almost as long. As proud as I am to call myself a Londoner, these days I do practically all of my living in Herne Hill. On any given morning, afternoon, or evening, you might see me in one of our pubs, enjoying a neat ice cream or coffee outside the station, basking in Ruskin or Brockwell Park, or running around either. You might also remember me as a candidate in the last election, though I had a lot less hair then. Back in 2018, Lambeth Council went from having 1 Green councillor to 5, including the excellent Becca Thackeray. This time round, though we do not expect to go from 5 councillors to 50 or to even achieve a majority, we believe we can increase our numbers and give the people of Lambeth the strength of opposition we sorely need. Because I have said on hundreds, if not thousands of doorsteps in the last 6 weeks, and for which I offer no apologies for repeating, opposition get greater scrutiny and greater transparency. That translates to better democracy all round, less money will go to waste. You only have to read the People's Audit report that was released this week to know how much we need that. Our environmental credentials, knocking on every single door in Herne.
Can you hear me? Thank you. I would like to start by paying tributes to the Herne Hill Forum, a community group for making Herne Hill a better place to live, work, and visit. It's been a tough 4 years for us with the impact of Brexit and COVID-19. I'm proud to say Lambeth Labour kept Lambeth going through the pandemic, delivering 24,000 food packages, awarding more than 9 million of support grants supported family with children on free school meal when the government refused to. We are investing 200 million over the next 5 years on improving hospitals, schools, libraries, parks, and transport infrastructures. I'm a specialist nurse, a mother and a grandmother. So I can tell you the negative impact of over a decade conservative austerity on our patients, our staff, our school, local services, which Lambeth Labour had managed so well. We are cleaning up our toxic air and tackling climate crisis, bringing Santander's bike, expansion of cycle hangars and electric charging points to most streets in Herne and Loughborough Junction, investing in Brockwell Park, Ruskin Park, Milkwood Community Space. For young children, for young people, we are making Lambeth the best place to grow. 95% of our schools are rated good and outstanding by Ofsted. We are delivering over 4,500 new apprentices and are investing 5 million in employment skill and infrastructures in Lambeth for Lambeth residents. I'm proud to say I established Positive Future Lambeth Forum in 2019, prevention of youth violence. We check on what matters to you all year round, not just campaigning during election time. I believe in the power of love, not the love of power. Therefore, please vote for Labour candidate Jim Dixon, the Patadiwell, and myself, Pauline George. Thank you very much.
Okay, now Liberal Democrats, I'm not certain who's going to be talking, is it? Okay, yeah, Charlie.
I'm just going to, standing is hard, so I am just going to do this. So my name's Charlie. I have lived here since I was 18 months old. I started my educational career downstairs in the nursery. I went to Jessup Primary School, and then I went to Bessemer Grange. I used to work at Judith Kerr Primary School, so I'm Herne Hill through and through. This is my home and has been for the better part now of 35 years. I care about this area more than I can actually say. Yeah, everything from Ruskin Park, Brockwell Park, hanging around in the paddling pool. It's all of these things that make Herne Hill my home, and it makes it the area that I want to represent. Lambeth have had a Labour in power since 2006, and we only got a 4-year break. And well, I'm an NHS worker. And one of the things that is said quite a lot is complacency is the mother of all mess ups. Not quite that phrasing, but you get where I'm coming from. Lambeth Labour are complacent. They've been complacent for too long because we don't have effective scrutiny, we don't have effective opposition. And I'm not saying that all Lambeth Labour councillors are bad. There are some really, really good ones. Like Lucy Caldecott is a friend of mine. But they're complacent. You can't scrutinise yourself effectively. You can't work effectively if there is nobody holding you to account, and you can't work effectively for the betterment of everyone in Lambeth and Southwark for that matter. You're not taking ideas and viewpoints from across the political spectrum. And that's the problem we have in Lambeth. That's the problem that we need to solve, and that's where we need to start voting in people who are not Labour. And I hope that will be me. I want it to be me, but we need more political voices.
Thank you, Charlie. And finally, on the Lambeth side, the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition, Burkhard Kartab.
Yeah, my name is Burkhard Kartab. I'm a member of the Socialist Party and a member of United Migrant Workers Branch. The country's overall wealth has grown in value by £3.8 trillion over the last decade, while property has increased in value by £2.1 trillion. But at the same time, millions of people are being forced to choose between eating or heating. Our services have been brutally cut. Thousands of workers lost their jobs over decades. Children's centres, libraries, and yes, the Tories are responsible for these cuts. But Labour, Lib Dems, and even the Greens have carried through the cuts demanded by the Tory government while standing up for us. Unlike most of the candidates here tonight, I'm not standing because I pursue a career in politics. I'm standing because working class people had enough of brutal cuts and privatisation. They had enough of mainstream parties that accept austerity and only talk about how to manage cuts. We need councillors who will vote against all cuts to jobs and services. We need high quality, decent council homes on council rent. We need to introduce rent controls. But how do we fight the cuts? Some of you might ask. That we would work with trade unions and local communities to submit a no cuts needs budget. Lambeth got over 140 million pounds in reserves, and they got borrowing powers. They could use these resources immediately need and send the bill to the Westminster elite, say, because councils can fight the cost of living crisis. They've got the resources, but only socialist killers are prepared to fight this vicious Tory government.
With that one. Southwark side now.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I'm Crates and along with Tristan Honey, were your Conservative candidates for Dulwich Village Ward. To be honest, I'm a little surprised to be here. Chartered accountancy isn't a typical springboard for political activist. I guess in some senses I share at least that in common with the gentleman from Tusk who just said that I'm not a political careerist. But I felt I had to stand because of what's been done in Dulwich. Pollution shifted onto already polluted and congested roads and mixed communities. Thousands of school children, including my own daughter, now breathe polluted air, deliberately forced onto the biggest school street in the borough. Cars and lorries, deliveries, carers, and buses sit in Labour-manufactured traffic jams. But Croxted isn't a ring road. Burbage isn't a bypass. An LTN in Dulwich was never going to work because local public transport is poor. It's the wrong solution for a community that got its neighbours. Residents don't want Fortress Dulwich, with visitors fined £65 for the pleasure of visiting. Local businesses must thrive, not just survive. I spent 2.5 years as chair of a residents' association, urging Southwark to think again. I wasn't alone. Residents said again and again that they didn't want what Southwark had done. But our councillors put their fingers in their ears. We'll remove the LTN and create a greener, safer Dulwich and Herne Hill, funding a community bus from the fines, electric charging, cycling school run traffic. We'll make sure our streets are clean and safe, especially for women. We know Dulwich and Herne Hill. Neighbours here look after each other. That's the place of, not Labour's vision of road set against road in a game of pass the pollution puzzle. With myself and Tristan as your council, Dulwich will be open, as pleased for us on the 5th of May. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have, amazing what meringues can do for people, all that energy. We now have Christopher from the Green Party.
So good evening, and thank you for inviting me along tonight. My name is Chris Langdon. I am one of the Green Party candidates for Dulwich Village in Southwark. I first moved to the area in 1999 into Milkwood Road in Lambeth before crossing across to Southwark in 2004. Both my children were born at my home in the road. I'm a chartered surveyor by background with some 20 years experience in the built environment, development and construction. I now specialise in sustainable development and integration of energy systems. I have to also declare I started my career as a local authority officer, South East London, where they first introduced the cabinet system. So I don't know if there are any questions on that later. I've worked in privately owned businesses. I've worked for a PLC and a large corporate global energy business. However, I now run my own business, specializing in delivering the projects that can deliver extensive retrofit programs, social and environmental infrastructure, and affordable housing, especially housing that is affordable to those that need it, where they need it, closest places where they live and work and where they can flourish, where they have connections and where they have roots. This is my first time standing, and I'm proud to be doing so, but please go gently on me. It was in this room actually last year at the climate change conference that I changed my outlook and decided that I needed to get more involved and use some of my experience and my knowledge to better ends. I think, and I believe we can and should be doing more to develop local policies, local strategies, and local plans to hold ourselves to account to higher standards than we currently do so. I believe that all of us as businesses, as communities, and as public authorities move out of our comfort zone to address the challenges of the day. So I believe in this part of South London. I believe in our sense of identity. And I hope that you feel that by supporting me, that you'll be supporting greater transparency, greater accountability, and ultimately, I hope, participating more in protecting the planet and enhancing our social justice.
Well, now for the Labour Party, Margie Newins.
Thank you and good evening. So I'm Margie. I've lived in Dulwich for 17 years. My son has been through the local state schools and I've been deeply involved in my community, including helping with a local group supporting refugees from Barry House and volunteering with S4 Community Energy. I spent 20 years trading sugar and I've worked in international development and now work for a local social enterprise supporting sustainable businesses. My fellow candidate Richard grew up in Dulwich and works in digital strategy for creative industries. First elected in 2018, we are proud to be standing on a Labour manifesto for our whole borough, delivering a fairer, greener and safer Southwark. Labour has a fantastic record in power. 95% of our schools are independently rated as good or outstanding. We're building 2,500 new council homes, more than any other borough. And for comparison, between 2002 and 2010, the Lib Dem Tories in power then built 10 council homes. We launching £1 million task force to tackle antisocial behaviour and will campaign with the mayor to fully reverse the government's £1 billion cut to London's police force. Our climate action strategy is independently rated as second best in London and one of the best in the country. We've more than tripled the number of green flag parks, and through our planning policy, we are creating 11 hectares, the equivalent of 16 full-size football pitches of newly protected green spaces. We've halved the council's carbon emissions and will halve them by 2026. Before 2010, under the Lib Dems and the Tories, Southwark had the worst recycling and council tax collection rate in the whole country. The housing service was a first in London. Labour has transformed our borough since 2010, despite the Tories and the Lib Dem governments cutting funding by over 60% in 12 years. Now, more than ever, residents are under attack from an appalling, callous and dishonest, corrupt government, baked in through a decade of austerity, awarding contracts to their mates. Vote for our positive manifesto for a fairer, greener, safer borough and to show Bob Johnson the door. Vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Margie. And now to the Liberal Democrats.
Going to say difficult to go last, but last name is Wingfield. You tend to get used to that. So my name is Richard Wingfield. I'm standing here with Raghav Parkash, and we're the two Liberal Democrat candidates for Dulwich Village. I genuinely believe that Herne Hill and Dulwich are some of the best parts, not just in paying an interest in what's going on, caring about their local community. It is part of what makes it such a fantastic part of London, such a fantastic part of the UK. But over the last few weeks and months that Rag and I have been speaking to people across Dulwich Village, despite the brilliance and the wonderful area that we live in, a consistent theme that we've come across is frustration. Frustration with a council that has become complacent and doesn't listen to people anymore. I'm not going to repeat everything that's been said about the LTN. I have a suspicion we'll be talking about that quite a lot this evening. But on a range of issues, people feel frustrated they are not listened to anymore. Whether it's inconsistent planning decisions, whether it's railings going up outside of their houses for no reason whatsoever, whether it's emails not being responded to. This is what happens after a council is in power for so long that it begins to forget why it's in power and forgets that there is an opposition movement and there are people who take different perspectives. So I share the view of some of the others that opposition is incredibly important. But rather than coming telling you that we have all the solutions to this area, I think what's so wonderful about it is that actually many of the solutions lie with the people in this room, with the people that we speak to. You live here, you know your roads, you know your community, you know how to improve your local schools, you know how to take care of your parks, you know what traffic issues you're facing on your roads and how to address them. The role of us as councillors is not to tell you how to live your lives or what is best for your community, but to listen to you, to work with you, and the resources that the council has to support you in that work. I really hope we get the chance to talk about some of our ideas, but I'm just as keen to hear about yours. And I very much hope you'll consider voting for us on May the 5th.
So very briefly, we didn't have the result earlier, but we do have the result meetings where we count the number of meringues depending on the color that you chose, right? So you vote with your mouth. Brilliant. And in no particular order, red got 19, yellow 14, green 7, blue 16, and white is 10. I don't know what the white represented, maybe none of the above, I don't know. But anyway, that's the meringue vote as returning officer for the Herne Hill ward. Okay, we're just going to go to questions, some of which have come in advance. Traditionally, we just remind people it's a sentence worded or expressed so as to elicit information. Sentence to get information. Right, got that? Good, right. Let's try to stick to it. Is everyone
I just wanted to ask the Lambeth representative if you'll follow the example of Southwark in and other London boroughs. What is next in promoting child health and putting child health first? Thank you.
Okay. We'll start off with Lambeth. So who would like to answer that first? Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much. My name's Jim Dixon. I'm one of the Labour candidates, currently councillor for Herne Hill ward, and also cabinet member for health and adult social care. And I think the question is a really important one. The issue around obesity, junk food, poor eating, and ensuring that our particularly young people, but everybody gets the nutrition they need, is extremely important. And what we experience at the moment is what's known as an obesogenic environment. In other words, we're seeing all sorts of bad food, junk food, and other poor nutritional practices being provided to us, almost as if we're unaware of it. So yes, we are very keen to ensure that we do something about advertising. Early in the new re-elected will look.
Yeah. think we should just have an awful lot of advertising full stop. Particularly on, and if the council certainly shouldn't be making money out of it.
Thank you. Sorry.
Oh, hang on. I'm just going to move this in. There we go. Yes, actually, I got an email from your group the other day, which was brilliant. Yes, so I'm not going to beat around the bush. I am fat. I'm really fat. So I'm fat, but I'm healthy. Apart from the, which is a different thing. So yeah, but we need to be looking at the way advertising works. We also need to be looking at food poverty and the fact that many of the things that are cheap, fresh fruit and veg isn't generally included as much in sort of the smart price in the budget lines. We need to be looking at food where the options are limited for issue, but yes, definitely on the advertising.
Okay.
Really good. Yeah, that's a really good question. Sorry. Yeah, with 30% of children in poverty, many families are struggling to feed their kids. I saw just the other day, people, by the way, increasingly more and more people are relying on food banks. But when people get food from food banks, they have to about, well, how much energy we get these, they make those choices based on the energy consumption. So this is the world, and yet can do a lot. They have a lot of powers. Like they could introduce free school meals. They could, create jobs. They could fund our schools, our education system. So I think it's quite kind of directly linked to the poverty that many working class people face today in Britain.
So just a couple of things on children's health. First is that we've signed the to and from spent in a clear environment. Part of the solution to that is seeing with the LTs, but also it's around working with the schools. Just remember, children given the opportunity, perhaps there's a little bit more storage at the schools, so they don't have lug so much backwards, and they can come on public transport, improving public transport to enable them to make those journeys. Sport. We have a fantastic set of green spaces and sports here in Dulwich, which are the whole of South. The whole area. We want to make sure those sports clubs are supported, the volunteers that run them, given the maximum profile, they can provide service to children far and which is obviously great for their health. Thank you.
Want to chip in?
Yeah, great. So I think we're probably all agreed on principles of active transport, improving pedestrian options, and so on in terms of the what next. I think also there's a point around better choices. I think Burke made an excellent point about we don't always have very good choices in front of us, and there's a lot of information and education out there that can make better choices. So actually, I don't reject advertising. I promote positive campaigning and education about those choices, and then moving on from the advertising to education, making sustainability a mainstream subject in our school. And finally, I think there is a campaign to be done locally within Dulwich, working with the Dulwich Estate and the Dulwich Society and others, to actually require businesses to develop sustainable strategies, whether it's food refills, and there are great examples, as we know, in the Herne Hill of that, but actually promoting better practices so people get offered better choices and more engagement.
Thank you.
I think it's fair to say that probably the greatest detriment to child health comes from poverty. And tragically, over the past 12 years of Lib Dem and Tory government, and we have had escalating childhood poverty. That is a fact. One of the things that Labour Council did in 2014 was introduced free school meals, universal free school meals for children who I think from infant, we've looked to roll that out to other age groups as well, and also to nursery children. That was a key thing that we did, because it meant put everybody on a level playing field and ensured that everybody got that a proper nutritious meal at lunchtime. We've provided a guarantee for 100% child and adolescent mental health treat for children, and that is a guarantee from Southwark Labour across the board, and that is something also that we put in place several years ago. And another way of getting children healthy is to get them active to and from school. Most of the people in this room probably were not driven to school. I wasn't driven to school. We need more children walking and cycling to school, which is good for their mental health and their physical health.
I think there are a few things that we can do here. I think the first, the most important, is in education. I think being able to teach young children how to cook, teaching about nutrition, and actually sometimes teaching their parents as well about how to cook sensibly, sustainably, and nutritiously is incredibly important. So let's work with schools to do that. Clive is right that we actually have some of the best sports facilities in all of London in our area. So let's encourage them and get more young people using them through subsidised entry or whatever it may be to make them more accessible. But third, we also have some fantastic schools with sports facilities and sports teachers. There are areas in Southwark with real deprivation where actually let's bring those kids and use those facilities and those opportunities and share them more broadly with some of the kids who perhaps do live in poverty or in more deprived areas. So I think there's a lot of things that the council could be doing here, and maybe let's not make it a party political football, an issue like this.
Thank you. Okay, the next question, I'm going to take the liberty of summarising or aggregating a whole lot of ones that came in. Just to name a few people who've contributed to this kind of topic would be Tim Connellan, Jeff Siegel, Giovanni Elkubi, Susan Badman, Linda Birth, Assason, Lisa Green, W. Alexander, Katie, and loads more. So bear with me, I can't ask all those questions, but collated, and we'll start off on the Dulwich side. 4 things. What are your views of the Dulwich Village low traffic neighbourhood? 1. Do you think it's achieving the aims? 2. What do you think about the process that brought it about? And 4, if elected, what changes, if any, would you make? Okay, so the views on the Dulwich Village low traffic neighbourhood, or as they used to be known, filtered permeability. They've been with us for decades in various places, but the recent ones that have been added have been interesting, shall we say, in inverted commas. So we start off on the Southwark side. We might do a different order this time. Richard, want to go first?
Is it still a minute, or can I have an hour for this? No, okay, all right.
We've got 50 seconds now.
First of all, let's be respectful in this debate, because there are good people on all sides of this very emotive issue, and we need to respect each other. We don't support the measures that have been introduced, not because we don't think we need to tackle congestion and pollution, but because we don't think that they're fair and effective ways of doing it. We're concerned about the displacement of traffic onto roads like Croxted that has been mentioned, and people taking longer car journeys than before. And there are lots of other ways of encouraging active travel that aren't so divisive and aren't so controversial. So we would remove those measures, and we would work with the community to find alternatives like the school street scheme, like speed traffic measures where they're needed, like working with schools to reduce car journeys, like improving public transport and bringing in a new electric bus. There are lots of things that we can do. I don't think the consultation process was brilliant, if I'm honest. And I think that alone has created a lot of the frustration that we feel. So we need to have a council that actually listens to and works with people, rather than just telling them and making decisions and then informing them afterwards what they're going to do in the area.
Margie, want to go next? Right, okay. 4 things. What are your views of the low traffic neighbourhood in Dulwich? Do you think it's achieving the aims? What do you think about the process that brought it about? And if elected, what changes, if any, would you make?
Actually, I'm going to start with the process question. So the process was very difficult. It was done in an emergency during COVID. The government said we had to apply for funding on a project by project basis and implement within 4 weeks. That was it. No time for any more consultation or anything of the sort. So the process was actually very, very difficult. It was also at a time when there wasn't much opportunity to meet with the community because it was COVID. And so I think the whole discussion effectively degenerated into a series of spiky emails, and it was difficult. And certainly, you know, I found it personally very difficult for those reasons. I think that it is absolutely crucial that we reduce traffic. We've got 16% of UK carbon emissions come from private car journeys. And there is no respected environmental organisation that does not believe that reducing traffic is a priority and that these sorts of measures have to be used to do that. They are used across other European cities and they are used across UK cities. It is achieving its aims. It's very difficult, like a very big topic. It is achieving its aims. It is.
Okay, so were they successful in their aims? No, absolutely not. What do I think about them? Well, the aims are to reduce air pollution, to save lives, and to improve our environment. The aims are laudable, but it isn't enough. So what changes is where I go to next. The changes are a package of measures. They're mobility hubs, they're better transport, the demand side response. There's a whole range of things that can be done and should be done and can easily be done. Mobility as a service. These concepts are out there, the technology is available. The process was deplorable. The pandemic was a unique event in our recent history, and to implement permanent changes when people are afraid to use buses and public transport was frankly irresponsible. It has damaged the cause, it has damaged the debate, it's been divisive, and it's been hugely saddening to see it reduced to attacks on each other. There is a collaboration, and I will work with anyone on this podium and anyone in this room to devise better outcomes for ourselves, for our children, for those who need accessibility. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Well, it won't surprise you to know that I don't support the Dulwich Village LTN, essentially because I don't think it is good for the environment. I think forcing people to make longer journeys in a part of London where there's poor public transport, so people don't really have an alternative way of getting around, simply sends them, A, they're driving longer, and B, they're driving more slowly in stop-start traffic, so the emissions profile of their journey is worse. I don't believe there's been anything like the level of traffic evaporation that would be needed to overcome the effect of those people taking longer journeys in stop-start traffic. I don't believe that for a moment. In terms of the process, there was a plan that the council wanted to implement. They couldn't get community support for it. The COVID came along, they got additional powers and money, they used that to implement this scheme. The process was completely wrong. If we were elected, we'll get rid of the scheme, we'll replace it in its entirety, cameras and all, we'll replace it with a community bus to get people around, improvements to public transport, which is the solution to getting people out of their cars, not roadblocks and cameras. We'll also put in more bike storage so people who can't at the moment cycle can cycle. Thank you very much.
Okay, over onto the Lambeth side. We'll do it in different order, just for excitement. So, okay, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, people have different opinions on LTNs, and I think my job is not to tell people, you know, what to argue, but it's about having a democratic oversight about LTNs. You know, where is it? They shouldn't be arbitrarily imposed by the council. There should be a democratic process that must be followed. But I think, you know, pollution is a serious problem, especially in London, with, you know, high density of people using cars. But I think obviously using public transport is the best way of fighting climate change, apart from the nationalised energy companies. But we can't encourage people to use public transport by just saying, well, use the public transport. If you have to pay hundreds of pounds every month for your public transport, that's not, you're not encouraging people to use it. So I think public transport should be free. It should be accessible. It should be extended, especially given the fact that the city is planning to cut the bus routes. I think reintroduce the bus routes, don't cut our bus routes.
Thank you. Charlie?
Yeah, so I don't have an issue with LTNs as an abstract concept. Like, brilliant. Reducing traffic, but reducing traffic, reducing pollution requires a holistic package of measures. We need better bus routes. We need to be doing more to encourage active transport. So Lambeth, for example, is currently one of 17 London boroughs where it costs more to rent a space in a bike hangar than it does to get a car park permit. A bike, yes it is, yes it is. Okay. So, to park a car in Lambeth, according to the report that was released recently, costs £38, and a bike hangar space costs £42. A bike hangar contains 6 bikes, which means, and takes up roughly 1 car parking space, which means that Lambeth Council is making about 250 quid per hangar over a car parking space.
Thank you, Charlie. Jim.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think LTN's work, and the one we've instituted in Railton is a huge success, and that's not me saying that, that's local residents came out overwhelmingly in favour when consulted at the end of the trial period. We've seen an 18% drop in vehicle movements, both inside and outside, and that includes the boundary roads of the Railton LTN. We've seen a 92% increase in cycling down Railton Road, and we've seen a similar increase in walking, and we've seen better air quality. So the Railton LTN, big success. We've introduced one or two changes. In order to enable disabled people to be able to go through a filter if they need to, and fully accessible private hire vehicles to be able to go through a filter if they're picking up somebody who requires their services. We're now introducing a programme of investment across the LTN area to embed those changes and ensure that people can really enjoy the improved public realm that they're seeing as a result of the LTN.
Okay, welcome to the stage, Celeste, who's going to take some questions.
Hello, I'm Celeste. I'm also standing with Nick and Paul. I mean, on the LTNs, I think we've just seen the example of it depends on the LTN, it depends on the way it was implemented, but we do know from everybody saying here that the issue here was consultation. It was making sure that you brought people along with us. So yes, as Green Party, we absolutely support the aims of the LTN to reduce traffic. I'm a mother with small children and I spend a lot of time walking around the streets. It is dangerous, it is scary, and it's polluted. So absolutely we want to see those changes, but we as we've all been discovering here, it was about the way that it was done. So if we were elected, we would try to make sure that any changes that happened were done in a consultative way. So we would want to bring along everybody, and as Christopher said, we would do that in consultation with everybody that's here, and we get that it's an emotive issue and we feel strongly about it too, but we would like to take along everybody with us and try to find the ways to figure out what to do next to move on from this, because we don't like it also to be this divisive issue.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is allied slightly, and it was sent in by Nicola. I don't know whether we've got Nicola here. It's about the school run. Oh, there you go. We've got a. Can we have a mic for Nicola? I've got it written here as well, so you better get it perfect.
Hi everyone. I'm Nicola and Claire's here as well, and we're from Sustainable School Run, which, as you sort of can imagine, we would like to see less from at peak time from school run and more sustainable options for parents. So our question is, there are 9,000 pupils at 9 non-catchment schools across Dulwich and Herne Hill. Thousands of these pupils live outside of easy active travel distance. A lot of them are young children, and actually, however safe the roads are, biking, quite long distances is tiring, especially up hills. It's just not practical for parents and families who don't live near to schools. There's currently school provided transport for about 1,500 of the 9,000 pupils, which is just 17%. So what specific actions will councillors take to reduce the thousands of daily school run journeys through Dulwich and Herne Hill from families who do not live in easy walking and cycling distance? Thank you.
Okay, we'll start over on Southwark side because there's slightly more of those schools over on that side. So should we start with Tristan?
Thank you very much, Nicola. We signed up to your pledge yesterday, so thank you for all that you're doing. We really appreciate it, and we're there to support reducing traffic where possible. In our manifesto, we're very clear that we want to see sustainably reduce traffic in the longer term. In terms of the number of people who come into our area, I've lived here for quite some time. I see such a difference in rush hour traffic between school holidays and no school holidays. One of the reasons that we think the LTN doesn't work is because, frankly, school traffic isn't really a problem outside of term time here. What can we do? We want to see schools encouraged to put on fewer carbon emitting buses. So we want to see transitions to electric free buses. We don't think that schools should have buses motoring with their engines running in stationary traffic. We're very committed to encouraging schools and working with them to find solutions. And the answer is public transport, which, as we've already talked about, isn't very good in our area. We need to see that improved and invested in, and there are £7 million in fines, which have been raised by the Dulwich Village LTN. This money needs to be reinvested in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Tristan. Christopher.
So I think there is an issue here about the quality of school places, the choice, the provision and the location. So I think it's important that people are able to choose schools that are local and are within active transport distances. So I think that's one aspect of the root cause. My wife is unable to drive. When my children were small, we used to put them on the bus and cycle after them on the bus, and it helped sort of develop some of their self-confidence at an early stage. And I think that those are things that we should think about, and people used to share and look after each other's kids. And I do think there is an element here about shared buses, the kind of minibus, the demand transport, the smaller, like electrical buses that will go and have like 6 passengers. So I do think there are creative solutions. They are being trialed. They are successful. Walking trail, it's out there. We just need to get the conversations and drop the idea that we can disagree with the political parties and work to those outcomes.
Margie.
Thank you, and also having signed up to your pledge, thank you for everything that you're doing. This is a continuation from the previous question very much. I think that in terms of sort of how the current measures are working, I think they are achieving their objectives, but there is much more to be done, and that's what I wanted to say. We obviously need much better public transport. It's a great shame that the TfL's budget for Southwark has been cut from £2 million to £700,000 by the government. We absolutely need proper investment in public transport. We need to see more buses, and we need to see less congestion. There is a lot of work to be done locally still on reducing congestion, and crucially on somewhere like Croxtedge Road, in order that the buses can actually travel properly. And I think that we absolutely do need to maintain a safe network of routes for active travel to school, because that feeds into the child health question, and it feeds into making our school journeys and our communities sustainable, and that's what we need to see. Thank you.
Richard.
Yeah,
I think this is a really good question, and I think there's a range of different solutions, but there's going to be different ones needed for different schools depending on different circumstances. So step one, talk to the schools, talk to the parents and the PTAs and find out what are the barriers at the moment that are preventing their children from going to school other than by car. Is it because they've got loads of stuff they need to bring in and out every day? Great, build more lockers in the schoolroom so they don't have to do that each time. Is it because they don't know the other parents in the area that they could carpool or car share with? Great, let's share that information or use new technology so people can find out who are the other parents locally that we can alternate shifts with. So I think number one, before trying to find answers, let's find out what the problems are at each school and work out solutions that are going to be measured and right for each of them in turn, rather than try to sort of guess what the silver bullet might be.
Jim.
Thank you very much. Absolutely support the pledge. Councillors are often accused of setting up LTNs around the areas they live in. I actually live just off a boundary road on the edge of an LTN, just off Croxted Road. And I have to tell you that there is an hour of bad traffic in the morning and an hour of bad traffic in the evening, except when Jags, Dulwich College, and Alaines are on holiday, and then it's perfect. There's no problems at all with those vehicles coming back and forth. Those schools really need to sort out their issue of how their parents and pupils get to their school. We can help them with busing, we can help them with active travel schemes. It's up to them to do something about it because they are polluting our environment in a really unacceptable way. So those schools, get a grip, we'll help you, but you need to do it.
Charlie.
So I actually went to my secondary school was out of catchment. State school, it just happened to be that a 10-minute train journey was a lot easier than getting the bus to any of the Lambeth secondary schools I was near. So therefore my key answer is you've got to look at improving public transport because that hasn't gotten any better since I was at school. It's not easier to get to school anywhere in Lambeth, or it shouldn't be easier to get to school outside of Lambeth than it is to get to school inside Lambeth for any of our students. So looking at active travel measures, looking at increasing bus usage, carpooling, it's the same thing everyone else is saying because they're the ideas that are going to work. You're not going to get really any of us saying anything different on this. Because we know what works and you know what works as well. You're not stupid.
Great, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to act like I'm an expert on this question, but what I would say is, we would work with trade unions, National Education Union, Unison, parents, school teachers, and with our communities to find solutions. But yeah, I would agree. I think better public transport, extending the bus routes, making it a bit more accessible. I think we have to take into account the disabled students as well. What provisions are being taken by the council and by the school, and again, that kind of links to the issue of funding our schools, funding our public transport. But I think most important is about talking to parents, teachers, also to excess students as well to find the best solutions.
Thank you. Sorry?
I just jumped off the stage.
Then if you want to jump back on the stage, you're very welcome.
Welcome back. Just feeling the pressure a bit. This is something I think about a lot, so thank you very much for the question. I've been part of an organisation which is working with all the Dulwich schools. My kids are at Judith Kerr School, and the state schools are working with the private schools in the area to talk about this. And I agree, there is a lot more that can be done on this. The schools should be taking leadership in it. They can do things like provide more bike racks. They can do positive advertising within the school. They can improve the buses. They can encourage the teachers not to use cars to get to work. And then local level, if I was elected, I would push for a public health campaign on air pollution and congestion and the dangers of cars. I would try to encourage more rolling out of things such as school streets. They're difficult around the private schools, obviously, because people are coming from further apart. But there's also the idea of walking buses, which we can encourage and try to get the car sharing schemes, The schools all know this and they are engaged on it. And in terms of what we've been talking about, general consultative approach to everything, collaborating and trying to use all the knowledge and resources that we have and bring everybody together on that.
Thank you. There's another question. Again, it kind of fits in a little bit that came in from Helen Palmer on the Zoom meeting. It's also been asked by a lot of other people, and it was alluded to earlier, which is about trying to get cycle parking. Lambeth have 11,000 on the waiting list for cycle parking. And the question is around the cost of a place in a cycle hangar per unit of area of road taken up is far greater than the cost of parking a car. And the waiting list is absolutely crazy. Some people have been there for years now. So the question is, what would you do to make the situation better and more equitable? So we'll start off on the Southwark side. Richard.
Well, in some ways, this is a relatively simple question because it's just about prioritization. It's about to what extent do you want to prioritize the rollout of cycle hangars as opposed to all of the other things that a council could be doing. And as you say, we want to be encouraging safe and responsible cycling. One of the real challenges with Herne Hill in particular is that we have a large number of houses that have been converted into flats. And so if you live on the middle or the top floor and you don't have access to the garden, there's nowhere really you can store a bike safely. So this is a particular problem for our local area. And the answer, I think, is just simple: prioritize it more. Look at everything that the council is doing, and if you, given that this, the sort of the financial impacts of this and the environmental benefits that it brings, it's just a matter of getting on with the job. And there's no reason why the council has been so slow in rolling out these cycle hangars, and why the waiting list is, as you've pointed out, now into several years for many people. So it's just about prioritisation.
Margie?
Thank you. Yes, cycle storage is absolutely key. We have a commitment to double the number of cycle hangars in the borough in the next administration, and I think that we cannot go fast enough on that. There is a cost element, obviously, and there is the element where sometimes when we consult with roads, the residents think they need to park their car directly outside their house, and therefore they're very reluctant to have cycle hangars, even though there will be other people in the street who desperately want it. So there is a process. It sometimes does take time. For me, I found it very frustrating that it has taken as long in some places, but it is absolutely a priority. In Southwark, I don't know, I think the waiting list was for Lambeth. In Southwark, certainly in this area, there is a waiting list, but perhaps not quite as big as that. But it is a reflection, that waiting list, of the fact that we do have a lot more people now cycling. In terms of the cost, the council currently subsidises the cost of a space in a cycle hangar. It is a budgetary consideration how much we want to do that. I think currently it costs about £30. The actual cost is probably double that. And that is for the maintenance of the cycle hangar, which is charged by Cycle Hoop, who installs it. But it's a budgetary consideration. So more money, more cycle hangars.
Richard. Oh, no, you've done, sorry.
Great. So incentivize more shared spaces. And there's ways of doing that, especially with EV chargers. Cars are utilised about 90% of the time, according to the London Society, a talk I went to last week. But Margie mentioned the budget, the TfL budget being cut in Southwark. Well, cut the Silvertown Tunnel and reinvest that money in cycle storage across London.
Clive, sorry, just get it right, don't worry.
The other one, thank you.
The other one, yeah, double act.
So bike storage, on the face of it, it should be very straightforward. We know that Southwark Council is now flush with cash with the £7 million that they've made from the LTM. We haven't heard where that money has gone yet, but we're determined to bring that cash here to reinvest it in our community. But yeah, encouraging cycling is something that we all want to do and see more of. It's about bike storage. It's about improving junctions and cycling safely. So really looking closely at how we can make our roads safer for cycles. And it's also about reducing congestion. You go to East Dulwich Grove or Croxted Road and you see the stop-start traffic. Those are not pleasant, safe or pollution-free environments in which to cycle. We're going to look at that and we're going to sort it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we should do our best to encourage people to cycle, and that includes introducing free cycle hangers or cycle storages. But again, this kind of links to the issue about funding. No, is the council going to see its residents as cash cows, the people who are going to pay the council money and money? The council, again, I'm going to repeat it, the council has more than 140 millions of pounds in reserves. They got the money, they could build a mass campaign, set a no-cuts budget to fund the services we do need, rather than seeing its residents as cash cows.
Charlie.
So currently, in order to meet the demand for cycle hangers, Lambeth would have to increase its cycle hanger provision by about 400%, which is, it's a lot of money. But at the same time, other councils are achieving this by charging more for more polluting vehicles to get parking permits. Doesn't have to be a lot more, but it helps offset the cost. It encourages people to go for greener, less polluting vehicles. We can also look at other options around, we need to increase the number of EV charging points to facilitate that switch. There's also, we have sites that aren't big enough to be used for anything else that we could start using as cycle storage as well. It doesn't have to just be hangars. There are lost spaces in our blocks of flats that are not used for anything else that could be turned into safe, secure cycle storage. So it's not just cycle hangars, it's looking at all of the options to provide safe storage and to make it as easy as possible for people to make greener choices.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks very much. I think we're all in violent agreement on this one. The single biggest factor in people deciding they can't cycle is storage, particularly people who live in flats and they haven't got the space to store their cycle outside. In fact, Lambeth and Southwark, I think we've both done about 500 cycle hangers each over the last 4 years. That's right near the top of provision in London boroughs. We're going to do 1,000 over the next 4 years. I think Southwark are going to do something very similar. That's really important. If we could do more, we can. Our most polluting vehicle has to pay £250 a year for their parking permit. Our least polluting pays nil. I think that's the right approach, an emissions-based approach. And I think we need to build on the huge growth in cycling that we've seen in the borough, and particularly in my LTN area, over the last 4 years. And that's why I'm really pleased that we found the money to work with TfL and make sure that Santander bikes will come to Herne Hill in the next year as a result of money Lambeth Council is putting in from its capital budget to make that happen. I think all of those things make a big difference. We need to be part of that cycling revolution.
Yes.
I would like to see some push-nudge factors in terms of pricing signals. So I would like to see money in workplace permits, increasing charges for people who are driving to work, and putting that money back into cycle hangers. I would like to see people being rewarded for choosing biking and walking and active travel over car ownership. For example, me, because I have got 5 bikes in my house. Is there a way that we can look at pricing signals to do that, so that I'm not having to pay extra money for visitors parking when they come, when I'm offering up my space outside my house the rest of the time? And again, as everybody said, more investment in things like safe cycle lanes and better safety provisions to encourage everybody to cycle more.
Thank you. Dermot in the audience tonight. Yep, brilliant. Your question. Dermot's one of the traders in the Bath factory estate.
Yeah, hi, so thanks for introducing me. Yeah, I'm from, can you hear me okay? Yeah. I'm from South London Makerspace on the Bath factory estate. So the estate represents a unique local resource, a business community of independence where things are made, maintained and repaired. Vital activities that provide meaningful jobs and will be key to a thriving localized economy as we adapt to climate change. We're now under multiple threats. An incoming strong-arm landlord who, among many actions, is replacing social areas and bike racks with yet more car parking, and plus rising costs and the general hollowing out of light industrial areas, e.g. for moped-heavy grocery and takeaway startups. So light industry may not be pretty, but the loss of it will be a heavy blow felt locally for years to come. Herne Hill has managed to maintain a good range of independent retailers. What will you do to engage with the challenges we face and support us?
Okay, we'll start with Southwark, because technically Bath Factory Estate is on the Southwark side. Who would like to go first? Anyone want to jump in on the Southwark side? Don't have to be anyone. Margie, come on.
So thank you very much for your question. Actually, I've had some correspondence with a trader on the Bath estate around the general setup there. It of course is not a Southwark Council area. I think it's owned by the Dulwich estate, leased out to another company, and now the Arches company are involved. So I think it's quite a complicated. Yes, it is in Southwark, but it's not a Southwark Council area. Yes, so it's not owned by Southwark Council. So therefore, as a council, we have very little jurisdiction over the area itself. As I say, it's owned by the Dulwich estate and then let out to a subleaseholder. There is what I would say is, you know, if re-elected, let's have a discussion about what you need there. It's absolutely crucial. I mean, Southwark in its planning policies, we do entrench the need to retain light industrial space. I think it's really important that we support that locally as well in terms of the jobs it provides. And let's have a discussion about that because, yes, it's, as I say, we're already aware of the issues there. And good luck with how you are able to be there. Thanks.
Christopher.
I have to say, your kind of business operation there is absolute lifeblood. It's an absolute jewel of the area. And we're partners with Dulwich Estate. You know, we're all part of the community. They need to develop some of their policies and some of their strategies, but they've come eons in the last few years. They're recognizing different mechanisms, turnover leases. There are all sorts of structures that can be put in place. So there's a campaign here. There's collaborative working, because if we don't build local business, you're going to have increasing traffic on the roads. You have to increase the internalisation, the self-consumption, and make our places more sustainable where we are. So I personally would fight absolutely tooth and nail. It's an area of professional expertise for me, and what you're doing is absolutely to be treasured.
Thank you. Richard.
Great, thank you. Well, I mean, I have to say, I think if we're going to use the Dulwich estate as an excuse not to do things, we're going to not be able to do anything in most of this area because of the way things are set up. So I think actually it's really important that as local councillors, we do stand up to the Dulwich estate sometimes, that we work with them, absolutely. But we use the authority we have or would have as elected officials is to put pressure on them and to bring communities together who are adversely affected, whether it's businesses or homos or others, to work with them to change their policies and to change the way they're being implemented. So I think that's one really important aspect. A second thing that we're really keen to do, and I'll be honest, I was inspired by the Herne Hill market on this, is that we'd love to create a Dulwich market. We'd love to be able to showcase some of the fantastic businesses and traders that we have in our area through an open public market in the same way that Herne Hill has done so brilliantly over the last few years as well. So those are a couple of things that we would want to do to support you and other businesses.
Well, the council has a lot of levers at its disposal, and we all know that small local businesses are the lifeblood of our communities. We've seen time and time again, local businesses are often the last to hear about things in our community. They're the last people to be asked for review. That's particularly been the case under Southwark Labour. We want to go there and really change that and look at what we can do to support you. I've spoken to a number of local businesses about markets. Local markets are fantastic in Herne Hill. They need to be properly consulted on. People need to talk about these things, but ultimately local businesses need to be brought in, and these kinds of initiatives need to come from them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Let's go over to Lambeth. Celeste. Oh, swap. Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm the third greenie out of the three of us. Cool. Obviously, very much going to agree with my green colleague Chris here in relation to supporting local businesses, because I don't want to go over the same kind of ground. I do want to mention that one of our big kind of green ideas, if you like, is we want to make single-use plastic-free roads across Lambeth. So we want to be lobbying food packaging businesses to end the use of unnecessary plastic packaging, which of course we can. If we work with our local markets, we work with our local traders. I think that's something that we really want to do. So again, it's all about the C word again, communication is coming up. We need to be communicating and asking what those local businesses and those local traders need. Cool, thank you.
Jim.
Yeah, just as a point of fact, I think the gentleman was talking about the Bath factory estate, rather different to Dulwich estate. And the Bath factory estate are a pretty ruthless landlord, and they need to be stood up to. And I very much support the work of the Guardian of the Arches, who I know have been working closely with the South London Makerspace and others to stand up to the Bath factory estate. We have a really long history and a good history in Herne Hill of independent businesses, but also standing up to property interests that want to threaten those independent businesses, which is why I was delighted to be able to join with the Herne Hill 4 years ago to make sure Network Rail, when they came in and did their, shall we say, rather top-down organised refurbishment of those arch units, we basically said none of the new units must go to chains or must go to large businesses. They must go to independent businesses that have Herne Hill roots. And I'm really pleased we're now starting to see that happen. Top end of Railton Road and the other side in Milkwood Road. So let's keep our Herne Hill independent businesses. Let's make sure that we keep Herne Hill special. And let's stand up to bullies who want to treat tenants in the way that the South London Makerspace and other businesses are being treated.
Charlie.
So my partner is actually an active member of a makerspace up near Old Street, so I know how much value and how brilliant those spaces are. I've really enjoyed wandering around the Old Street one. I think one of the key reasons we need to defend our light industrial areas around in Herne Hill and work to continue to support independent businesses actually ties into climate change. If you've got local creating jobs that are being recruited for locally, you cut commute times. You make it possible for people to make better choices. So independent businesses have a huge part to play in supporting the local economy, in supporting in supporting tackling climate change for everyone. So it's vital we defend them. And that includes standing up to bullying developers and bullying landlords. Lambeth Lib Dems are also working in other areas of the borough to try and tackle the issues you mentioned about moped delivery drivers taking up space and creating issues around waste and recycling.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, it's the first time I heard about this issue, but after this meeting, I'll look into it more. But yeah, without knowing the details, that's why I don't really feel in a position to say something about it, but I'll definitely look into it.
Okay, another question that's come in again via Zoom and also in advance. I'll mention the issue in Milkwood Road, which is down by the junction with Herne Hill, which is fly tipping. It's been a sore point for many, many years. So the question really is, because it's been going on for a long time, why is it happening? And what innovative ideas do the candidates have to reduce the issue? Because doing the same thing isn't going to solve it, because it's still there. So it's the fly tipping and the kind of street rubbish that gets dumped. That's the question. So we'll start this end.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Well, so recycling in Southwark isn't what it could be. I think the levels have been stuck at around 35% for the last few years. The target was 50%, I think, by 2020, and we're not there yet. So one of our platforms is to make a big push around recycling. That obviously feeds into rubbish and waste. What we want is to improve access to recycling facilities. The Old Kent Road facility is great, but people have to have a car to get there. They have to drive there and so on. What we want is a mobile, what we call a mega bin, something that's been rolled out in Wandsworth, something that moves around, enables people to take large items from their homes much more easily and more conveniently dispose of this sort of thing. And we think that is the kind of thing that will make a dent on fly tipping. Thank you.
So I think there are two answers for me. One is around competence of service and investing in the service to do the job properly. I'm not sure it's necessarily a question of innovation, it's doing the job correctly and with vigilance. So I think that's an experience that I've had. The other aspect is better regulation of private landlords. There's a lot of fly tipping that comes from high turnover rates of private residential property, where the builders come in, turn around and dump the waste. Better regulation from the council of private landlords is an essential root cause of this issue.
Margie.
Thank you. So Southwark Council does actually have a bulky waste collection service. So it is there, it can be used. There is no need to be driving to Kent Road a dump. Nevertheless, fly tipping, it sadly occurs. There is a good argument, and I think that Southwark has on occasion where there is a particular hotspot of fly tipping, has put in CCTV to try and catch the perpetrators. On the Dulwich Village side, we'll know that we had an electrical recycling bin in the middle of Dulwich Village for some time, which was being consistently ransacked by people who, because electrical waste actually is one of the most valuable things that you can recycle, and they were dragging it all out and then rifling through and leaving the what was left on the pavement outside. There is a good argument, if if that is reinstated locally, as I hope it will be, or perhaps a different location, to have CCTV CCTV oversight of that. But it is a really difficult problem, and yeah, we obviously need to be vigilant to that, and perhaps CCTV is an answer.
Richard.
Thanks. So I think there are three dimensions to this. First of all, preventing it from happening in the first place. And I think the way you deal with that is by reducing the bulky goods collection service at the moment, to either subsidize it or make it more freely available to people, so people drop it less in the first place. Secondly, as has been pointed out, we used to have an electrical bin in the area to collect these kinds of goods. That's gone, and we don't know where it is now. I think there's a Twitter account trying to work out where it is, but we certainly don't know. So bring back more of those and make them more easily accessible to people. And third, regulatory enforcement as well, that has been pointed out. But we also need to look at things like technology to allow people to, I mean, we've all over the pandemic been sharing items and giving things away. Can we use more of that so that where items are still saleable or usable, we recycle, reuse, rather than just dump them in the first place? So I think there's lots of different levers that can be used. The Liberal Democrats' ambition is to get our recycling rate to 60% in Southwark. It's stalled at 35% for the last few years. We can absolutely be doing better on this one.
Paul.
Yeah, so one of our Lambeth Green pledges actually free regular collections of bulky waste. And that really would help solve the problem. I mean, I remember myself, I had to get rid of something bulky, and you go online and I think it cost, then you have to get a Post-it note and write on the Post-it note what your number is. And it was just, if you're going to make something a faff, people aren't going to do it. So what you need to do is you make it easy for people. So free regular collections of bulky waste are the way to do it, to deter fly tipping. And then of course, once again, it goes down to the community and communication side of things. As a council elected, I want to be plodding the streets myself, making sure that if they're asked, oh, is fly tipping, I should be aware of that. But I need to be open and available to the community, to have an email, to have a phone call, text message saying, Paul, there's some fly tipping there, sort it out, mate. Okay, yeah, that's my job. I'm the councillor, fine. So there's your kind of two pennies worth, if you like, that I think is a way to deal with this issue. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. Jim.
Yeah, it is an issue in the area. I'm pleased to say that Lambeth at the moment is the fastest improving in a London borough on recycling, but we still have a long way to go. We will do that. And actually, one of the ways in which you improve your recycling rates is by ensuring people on estates and people in difficult to recycle locations actually get the facilities they need. And we're very committed to investing that infrastructure over the next 4 years to make the next step up. As far as fly tipping around the streets of Herne Hill is concerned, I think you just got to get really hyper local on it. So 2 years ago, there was a particular problem with fly tipping on the corner of Reimer Street and Dulwich Road. I sat down with the tenants in Reimer Street. We got some council enforcement officers in. They put CCTV cameras up on the corner, and we actually saw there were a couple of local businesses who didn't want to have commercial refuse contracts doing a little bit of sly dumping every so often, and we were able to actually fine a couple of those people, and they didn't do it again. So let's get the locations, let's get the tools in place. I'm always available to ensure that that happens, and let's take out the spots that are a particular headache for businesses and residents.
Charlie?
So I already spend quite a bit of my time actually wandering the streets of Herne Hill reporting fly tipping, broken paving stones, because I'm weird. You've got to get my fun where I can. I think we also need to, as has been mentioned, we need to look at the bulky waste. So the last time I tried to use the bulky waste collection, it took half an hour to book an appointment and pay for it, and then it was collected 2 days late, which is not great service. If you don't make things easy to use, people aren't going to use them. It's that simple. We also need to look at the fact that currently the council sites are not as open as maybe they could be. It should be fairly easy to tell when somebody turns up whether they're a Lambeth resident or not. You shouldn't need to book an appointment. Again, if you make things complicated, people don't use them, so we need to make it easy.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the simple answer is, well, we definitely need more resources, more funding to waste services. I mean, councils used to pick up big waste like mattresses or furniture for free, but because of austerity, they had to, well, they cut a lot of waste services. But I think, no, I agree. We should get rid of super high collection fees. But we shouldn't be encouraging people to fly tipping. But we do need those resources to be implemented and those services to be more accessible.
Thank you very much. Okay. Quite a few questions that came in and could be summarised, especially to do with Milkwood Road and Half Moon Lane, which is the excessive traffic speeds down there. It's a continuous thing, and I personally know in Milkwood Road, this problem has been going on for years and years and years, still to not much in terms of a solution. The irony is, in somewhere like the Netherlands, they don't really bother with police enforcement much because they treat traffic speeding as a failure of infrastructure design. So they just redesign the road to design the speed out. So they don't have to have police everywhere and issuing fines and things like that. So I'd be interested, and people who've sent in this question would be very interested in what, in terms of an approach and policy, you would have for dealing with what is essentially an antisocial behaviour of excessive speed on the traffic, especially on Milkwood and Half Moon Lane. So let's start off over on the Lambeth side, and we'll start with Paul.
Cool. Yeah. It's interesting, actually, this question came up because obviously we're all door knocking at the moment, and we did Milkwood the other day, and I spoke to some residents who were understandably really worried about this. It's one lady on Milkwood who actually pointed out to me where the lamppost was damaged because of the excessive speeding. Obviously, there'd been accidents there, and she pointed out about 5 accidents. And we spoke about in length. I mean, I said to her, I'm no traffic calming expert, but we sort of bashed out some ideas, and something she suggested, I thought was a very good idea, that you have priority traffic. You get the little island bits that stick out, and you have priority one way, priority other way. That is one way of slowing down traffic. We talked about speed cameras, but we sort of came to the conclusion that they probably wouldn't be any good, because you know what the traffic's like. It slows down, brakes hard, and then speeds off again. But the bottom line here is we asked the community. We came up with some suggestions. And like I said, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert about traffic calming measures, but it's about me to sort of signpost and find out and listen. So yeah, thank you.
Jim?
The biggest single change that would make it easier for local authorities and public authorities generally to deal with speeding traffic is to transfer enforcement powers to local authorities from the police, because we're close to it. We could put the measures in place, like cameras, like other speed detection measures that would enable us to do the efficient job that we do with, for instance, LTNs and fining that I know people are unhappy about, but the efficient job around speeding that we do in every other respect around parking and everything else. So that would be a major change. The government are saying no. We as local government are lobbying hard for that. I'm optimistic we might get that at some point. As far as Milk Road's concerned, I was very pleased that Pauline and I were able to lobby the council to get a new zebra crossing at the junction with Langdon Road and traffic calming measures all the way down from Langdon Road to the end of Milkwood Road where it meets Hinton Road. Those are the sorts of investments we need, and we're looking for investment in the next 4 years to do the other bit of Milkwood Road that still very badly needs attention.
Thank you. Charlie.
Yeah, so I live just off Milkwood Road. I was really, really pleased to see the zebra crossing come in because I only mentioned it to Jen when I was 7. So it was great to finally have that happen. Many things are worth waiting for. A zebra crossing should, I feel, not probably be one of them. But there are measures that we can take to reduce speeds. There are speed cameras, a single speed camera, not so much. Average speed camera might help. There are a lot of turn-offs, so it's not going to enough of a difference. But yeah, I've witnessed about six years ago, and it was horrific. So yeah, something needs to be done. We need to look at these at various traffic calming measures, average speed cameras, increasing the number of crossings, and also increasing the length of time that those crossings stay at red helps reduce traffic, or helps reduce traffic speed.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, speeding puts the safety of other passengers, other car drivers, and people walking out on the streets. But again, I think it links to the issue of working with the communities to decide what kind of measures we need. But we also need proper investment in public transport, and I personally think it's a madness to drive in London. If you want to get from one place to another really quickly, I think public transport is probably your best option. So I think properly investing in our public transport, making it accessible, making it free as well, renationalising it. I think that doesn't directly link to that question, but these are the solutions if you want to encourage people to use public transport or cycling. And get and preventing accidents like car accidents in the future. This is the best way of solving these problems.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. Yes, well, I think this is a particular issue in our area because we have quite a large number of schools, particularly primary schools, whose entrances go right onto a number of our roads, particularly including Half Moon Lane, as well as a higher proportion of older people or people with mobility issues. So we have an increased risk of dangerous accidents happening, which is why I'm kind of glad that we're talking about it. But speeding is not some new issue that we've only had to think about in the last few years. This has been an issue for many years. And so there's a degree of frustration when councils who've been in power for sort of 12 plus years say, oh, well, we'll look at it in the next 4 years. We'll do something about it later. These are problems that could have been solved already because it's not rocket science to deal with speeding. It's looking at effective traffic calming measures. It's looking at speed cameras. It's looking at what's worked in other parts of London and other boroughs in similar situations, learning those lessons and introducing them here. So it's a matter of just taking what works and getting it done and not saying, oh, well, it's not our problem or it's somebody else's problem or we'll do it later. These are problems that we could have fixed by now and they should have been fixed by now.
So I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding. I come back to what Jim said. That is absolutely the crucial issue here. The situation we're in at the moment is that obviously we know that speeding is a big problem. If we put in speed cameras, we pay for the hardware and the software and all the revenue goes to central government. It is not something that councils in the current environment can afford to do. So absolutely what Jim said is what needs to happen. We need to be given control over that process. I think Half Moon Lane, I mean, I've seen a car on its roof on Half Moon Lane some time ago. Speeding obviously is a problem, and some of those larger roads are perhaps more difficult to deal with where they're bus routes. I mean, I've been doing community road watch locally. Croxted Road has always been a big problem. Lordship Lane is a big problem. Half Moon Lane is a big problem. But then people talk about also some some much smaller roads, like Dovercourt Road, for example. So there is a role of a number of measures here. I think in some of the roads which are not bus routes, perhaps you can have build outs. There are a number of things that need to be done, but the crucial issue is getting control of the ability to enforce with speed cameras.
Thank you. Christopher.
So I don't agree with that. By the time you get to speed cameras, it's too late. I used to work at a council, and some of the speed cameras were treated as a cash cow. The problem here isn't to take control and generate revenue. The problem is to design out at source. I lived on Milkwood Road for 5 years, opposite the Mahatma Gandhi estate. It's a complex road with lots of different users, schools, playgrounds, industrial areas. It's a long straight road that feels industrial. It encourages speeding by its very design. So stop councils putting in measures at the end of the year when they've got unspent budget and then putting them back in the year after, because they all do it. And then take the long-term view about proper, sensible design. We've got the skills, we've got the knowledge. We just need to get down and get on with it.
Yeah, actually, I agree with that. I think the long-term answer is to design out speeding, what you might call a continental approach of just making the road look like a place that might have children, might have cyclists, that you wouldn't want to speed, and so you don't. But I think what's going on here is a failure of strategy. Resources in Dulwich, I'm talking, but Herne Hill as well. Resources have been focused on certain areas and not others. There hasn't been a main road strategy. As a result, we have traffic backing up on Croxted Road and other main roads. And when at other times of day, we have speeding, and I've been there with the speed check team on Croxted Road, seeing that speeding. In the short term, I actually don't think fixed speed cameras are necessarily the answer, because of course people know where they are and they just don't speed. But Southwark does have access to mobile speed trackers that can move around and just give people the general impression that they might get caught. And I think if people feel there's enough chance that they'll get caught, and it doesn't need to be a very high chance, then they'll stop speeding. Those should be used more aggressively. I think in the very short term, that's the solution. In the longer term, resources and designing out speeding is the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a quick thing, if anyone's aware, there was an app released for Android called SpeedCam Anywhere, that is the first app that will accurately measure and automatically report any speeding vehicle. So you can install it on your phone, pointed at a car coming towards you, and they will receive a fixed penalty notice in the post once it's been verified by the police. It's just been launched, it's coming out on Apple soon, but it then puts into the hands of everyone the ability to track speeding vehicles. And the police have said it's going to be absolutely revolutionary when people can start reporting anywhere. So you don't get to see the speeding camera sign anymore. Everyone is looking out for it. So it's just a little point there. Right, we'd like to go to questions from the floor. If you've got a question that hasn't been covered, or you want to really drill down on something in depth, this is your opportunity now. So is anyone, lady at the back there, we can have our roving mic. If you could give your name and remember the definition of a question, short sentence to get information. And if it's to one particular person, let us know.
I'm Linda Bird, and I don't think tonight people have taken into consideration the amount of anger that is around in Dulwich about the LTNs, especially from shopkeepers, residents, elderly and disabled people. And we feel that there's no democracy, that we've not been listened to at all. And I'd like to know what the candidates would do about restoring democracy in the area.
Okay. So the issue is the way decisions are taken with a local community. Would that be fair? Thank you. All right. Is that directed at anybody in particular, or are you happy for all the candidates to answer? No. All right. Well, let's start off in Southwark. Margie, do you want to kick off?
So obviously this is very much a recurring theme. I completely understand the issue has been very controversial, and as I said earlier, it's been really, really difficult for us. We are in a situation where 16% of our carbon emissions come from private cars. The majority of the population gets less than 50% of the recommended amount of daily exercise. as a council, you think, what are we going to do about it? It seems quite clear we need to reduce traffic. We need to get people travelling who can, travelling actively. I think one of the difficulties really has been that the debate locally, forgive me, has been slightly misleading, because I think a lot of people have tried to sort of suggest that we can somehow manage to reduce traffic by everybody driving the way they do now. There is no silver bullet. It's very unfortunate. What we've tried to do, obviously, as you know, there were some changes very recently which involved introducing a reduction in the timings of the restrictions and access for all Southwark Blue Badge holders, etc. So several changes. There's a lot more work needs to be done. We need to get it right. But unfortunately, sitting back and doing nothing is not the option. Taking it all out and kicking the can down the road another 10 years is also not the option. What we've got now is far from perfect. It needs more work, and that's what needs to happen rather than going backwards. Let's go forwards. Let's make it work as well as it possibly can.
Can we focus on the process of the way you work with the community over issues such as LTN, which is what it's raised? Because I think the community felt they were ignored, or some aspects of sections of the community felt they were ignored. So Clive, can we focus on that?
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, the community were ignored. I mean, 2/3 of the community said that they didn't want the LTN. They didn't want it at all. They wanted it taken out in its entirety. Even more people said they wanted a significantly modified version of it. Southwark didn't listen, and they went ahead. This LTN was put in as an experiment, and I'm prepared to accept that it was put in good faith. But once the experiment was seen to have failed, the LTN should have been removed. That's where democracy failed. In terms of what I want to do about it, that's why I'm here. Because unless we have councillors who will listen and reflect the views of the community back to Southwark Council, there is no democracy. That's why I've stood, and that's why I want you to vote for me and Tristan. Thank you.
So Paul said much the same thing about Milford Road. He said, you've got the answers. And I genuinely believe that. We haven't used the word engagement very much this evening. We talked about consultation. In my work, I talk about engagement. That's identifying the solutions, making sure that, I also think we have to move out of our comfort zone. So don't get me wrong, I actually agree with Margie on that point. But we have to do it in a way that we're not doing that at the expense of people's genuine needs. The consultation, the emergency services was deplorable. The whole process was deplorable. And as I said earlier, we have done huge damage to the outcomes that everybody in this room wants to see in terms of air quality and accessibility. So it's back to grassroots, it's monitor and manage, which means you implement a measure, you see how it works, you adjust it, you tweak it, you look at a whole package of other issues to how to implement it. And that is a consultation exercise based on a prior engagement built on trust. And without trust, we have nothing. So it really is over to the room for the ideas and the solutions, and then how we best plan and co-design and implement.
Richard.
Thanks. Well, I think the way Margie described it is for us as part of the problem. We need to do this to you. We need you to be doing these things. And I don't think that's what a council should be doing. It's not the job of the council to tell you all how to live your lives. Maybe that is the liberal in the Liberal Democrat in me, but it is our job to enable you to live the lives the way you want to do them. We all know the environment is important. I've heard nobody say we shouldn't be looking at reducing congestion and pollution in this area, but there are different ways of doing it, and the people who live here know what will work locally, not the councillors up in London Bridge or wherever they're based. It's you. So we want to raise your voices and respect those voices and work with you to support you to find the solutions that you need. Because the trouble is when the council just imposes them, when it tells you it's consulting, but really it's just telling you what it's doing and not really listening to what you want to say in return, it creates mistrust, it creates this division and frustration that is not good for democracy. And we have the highest turnout in this ward, in all of Southwark. Democracy is very important to all of us, and I really worry about how it's been undermined over the last 4 years.
Paul. Yeah. Choose your. Oh, we're going to swap. Yeah. Okay. Back to Nick. Democracy, Nick.
Yeah, democracy is important, and I think that whether we have it or not in Lambeth is open to question, because Lambeth Labour at the last election got 90% of the seats from 50% of the votes. They behave like the opposite was true. I mean, I don't want to only talk about low traffic neighbours, but low traffic neighbours, there was not enough communication beforehand. There was not enough communication during, and there has not been enough communication afterwards. We're finding actually it's not just that people are opposed, like angry and expressing themselves by chopping their heads off tulips. Some people are just pissed off because these things have been happening to them, not with them, and you can do things to them if you talk to them, if you listen to them, and actually if you work out the solutions together rather than impose them upon them because you think you know best.
Well, Paulie, tag wrestling going.
Thank you, my people. This question has been in my mind, in my heart, in everything, because democracy is the government of the people, for the people. If you re-elect us, we hear you, we listen to you, and we care. The fact of it is that, as Maggie rightly said, we were given only 3 weeks to decide. So please, next time, get yourself very involved. We will listen to you. I said to you, I believe in the power of the love of power, or not the power of love. Please, just get to us with this LTN, whatever you want. It is for your good. Climate emergency, it is for your good. Climate emergency, my people. You think of the bad pollution to our children. We are thinking of the future. So you please work with us. We want to be there for you. Your happiness is our joy.
Thank you, Pauline. Charlie. Charlie? Go for it.
Wow. Lambeth don't listen. It's that simple. They haven't listened on just off the top of my head, the Carnegie Library, Cressingham Gardens, the Carnegie Library, any of the other libraries, the LTNs. These are all campaigns I've been involved in since, I was, yay high. My introduction to Lambeth politics was occupying Acre Lane because Lambeth Council wouldn't let us into a public meeting to discuss the future of the Carnegie Library. I was 10. I'm 35 now. That's 1/4 century of Lambeth not listening. You say you want to consult, and you consult, and you consult, and you consult. And then I assume that there is a Douglas Adams fan in the council because everything seems to end up in the basement with a sign on the door marked, "Please beware of the leopard," because it never seems to have any actual effect. We need engagement. It's that simple. Not talking, engagement.
Well, I think if you talk to 99% of people who live in Lambeth, they feel left out from politics. They feel like they've got no voice in how the council is run. Yes, the politicians will come here during Hustings or during election periods. They might listen to you, but they'll listen to you, then ignore you after they get elected after they get elected. And that's why Trade Unionists and Social Coalition, which is a coalition of trade unionists, community campaigners, of ordinary people, are standing in the elections. So we can't leave politics to different shades of establishment. I think councillors should be accountable to residents. They should be subject to recall. They can't be elected every 4 years and take decisions on behalf of the rest of the people in borough. They should be accountable to residents, and they should be removed by people if people are not happy with them. So just finish on this note, working class people feel excluded from politics. When Labour Council have been carrying out cuts in Lambeth, who did they consult? No one. They just did Tories' dirty work. So I think there's a lack of democracy, and that's what working class people should be involved in politics.
Thank you. All right, we're mindful of time. I would like, if it's okay with you, just to get the summing up, a minute from each candidate. I'm not certain who's doing the summing up on. Could it draw lots? Who wants to go first? Yeah, go for it.
Right, well, look, what a fantastic evening of discussion. I've actually learned a lot listening to the other candidates. And I'm sure they've learned a lot listening to us, and we'll see what we've said reproduced in their materials before long. I think the thing that's come to me, and it's common across Herne Hill and also Dulwich, is about democracy. It's about being listened to. It's about councillors who respond and implement your will. It's philosophical. Is the councillor there to implement the thing that they wanted to do already, the passion that they had in life, or are they there to listen to you and work out what you want and find the best way to give that to you? It's clear to me that what we have at the moment in Dulwich isn't working in terms of that process of listening and acting on what people want, and that the LTN is a crystal clear example of that. We need new councillors, myself and Tristan, the people to do that. I hope we've shown you that tonight, and we look forward to May the 5th. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much for not being too hard on me. That was my first Hustings. And I very much hope you invite me back. Irrespective, I've been getting involved in more and more local campaigns, and I intend to continue doing that, whether elected and voted in or not. I think there are enough issues. We haven't talked enough this evening about climate change. However, I do think the issue of transparency and accountability is really, really critical in this debate. We've talked about Labour and we've talked about the council as if they're one and the same. They are not. So it's really important. And I work for a party that is not whipped, and I believe that I can challenge and bring members' inquiries and act on your behalf rather than the interests of the party. And so on that basis, I think it is in the interest of healthy democracy to shake things up a little bit around here.
Margie, you've got a minute.
So first of all, we did shake things up a little bit around here when we were elected in 2018. And that's the first time that this ward has not had Tory councillors. So it is not an established thing here in Dulwich. With regard to the local traffic issues, I know that has undoubtedly been overwhelmingly the biggest topic of discussion locally. As I say, we know there is more to be done. We know there is monitoring on all local roads to make sure that the system that we have can work as well as possible for everybody. That's why we've introduced the amendments that we have with the changes in the time restrictions and the access for blue badge holders. But we need to create an environment which is good for all of our community, from the very young to the very old, to be able to enjoy being outside and walking and cycling, and that is good for everybody's health and for our whole community. There are many, many more reasons, however, why we need to vote Labour. We need housing. We've opened 5 libraries. We need good schools. There are many, many reasons to focus not just on this one local issue. Thank you.
Richard.
Thank you. Well, I think an overwhelming message this evening has been that Labour isn't listening. And I'm sorry, Pauline, but when you say to people, this is for your good, that sent a chill down my spine. That is not the way a council and councillors should be behaving in a democracy. We are here to serve you, not the other way around. But secondly, we've also got to move on from the LTN. It cannot define us as a community. It has taken up an overwhelming amount of energy during this election campaign. And yes, it is hugely important and we need to sort that problem out, but there is so much more to be done as well. And we cannot let that become a totem that divides this community. We need to solve it, yes, but let's do lots of other things together as well. And so that's why I'm so glad, as the Lib Dems, we want to solve it, but we're also talking about so many other things: affordable housing, tackling the climate emergency, better public transport, supporting the cost of living crisis and people who are suffering from it. So if you care about more than the LTN, there is a party who will stand up for you on every issue over the next 4 years, and that will be Rag and Mead from the Liberal Democrats.
Over on the Lambeth, the Herne Hill and Loughborough Junction ward, Nick.
So the Green Party currently has 5 councillors in Lambeth, one of which is in Herne Hill and Loughborough Junction. So this election is not about whether the Greens would do a better job of running the council than Labour, though we of course think we could, because with all the will in the world, Labour will still be running things in Lambeth after the votes are counted. If you vote for the Green Party next Thursday, you'll be telling them to listen to you more and community better. You're telling them that theirs are not the only ideas worth considering. You'll be telling them to spend more time checking their sums and to spend your money more carefully so there's more of it to go around. You'll be ultimately telling them to work harder. If you vote for the Green Party, you'll be telling Landlords Labour you believe that they can be better. I believe they can be.
Jim, your minute.
Yeah, thanks very much. I just want to reflect that we're really lucky to have Herne Hill Forum to organise an event like this and represent local people. We always continue to listen to Herne Hill Forum and to local people as long as we remain the local councillors, and we hope very much that you will put our trust in us for the next 4 years. If you do, we have a very positive agenda for Herne Hill. Herne Hill's a great place to live, but it could be even better. Our 5 pledges, just very quickly: we will bring Santander bikes to Herne Hill for the first time. We will roll out electric vehicle charging and bike hangers to every street in Herne Hill. We will build affordable housing for local people who are currently priced out of the market. We will work with the police to keep you safe and make sure your priorities are those of the police around fighting crime. And we will invest in your parks. We're putting £1 million into Ruskin Park and continue to invest in Brockwell Park. You get a positive agenda with us, you get a listening council, and you get listening councillors. Vote for us.
Sorry. Your minute.
So when you're casting your vote, I want you to ask yourself 2 questions, whoever you're voting for. If you're considering voting for an incumbent, just ask yourself, if they care so much about an issue, why haven't they already done it? It's really simple, but I genuinely don't think we ask ourselves that question enough as voters. If you care about an issue, why aren't you already doing it? We need accountability in Lambeth. Labour have gone unchallenged, unscrutinised for too long. They're complacent. Said it before, I'll say it again. I'm going to keep on saying it. They're complacent. Lambeth Lib Dems, we're out there, we're on the streets, we're reporting fly tipping, we're dealing with the issues around moped delivery drivers, we're doing work on violence against women and girls all over this borough. Lambeth Lib Dems are working hard, and we don't even have a councillor. We're doing all of this off our own backs. So what's Labour's excuse?
Okay.
I think what was clear in this meeting tonight is that working class people and residents in Lambeth have been let down by the political establishment. I mean, today it wasn't really mentioned. I think people didn't really mention the cuts that's been taking place and up and down the country. But I just think it's worth reiterating how awful these cuts have been to our local communities. And Labour councillors say that their £140 million in reserves are for rainy days, but it's pissing down. The inflation has reached 9%. The people are in a dire situation, lack of housing, low pay. Our public services are in dire situation. So there's definitely we do need an alternative. We do need to involve working class people in politics. Now, we can't leave politics to different shades of establishments who don't actually listen to people. We need to work together with our communities, with trade unions to fund the services we need. And no to austerity, no to privatisation. And if you agree, join the Socialist Party, join the Trade Unionists and Socialist Coalition. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you one and all. Just going back to that straw poll we did at the beginning, just to see how the evening's gone. Can you put your hand up? Who came here thinking they knew who they were going to vote for, but now maybe have changed their mind? Anyone? Maybe, all right. And who is still undecided? Ooh, so that's dropped. Well done. Okay. I want to thank the candidates. They're our neighbours who have put their heads up above the parapet to do this job. It isn't easy, and I really respect and admire them for even giving it a go. So just please, a round of applause for the candidates. Stand up, got them all here. Please, really good. They'll be hanging around afterwards if you want to ask questions. They'll probably be in the pub if you need to buy them drinks. It's fine, it's allowed. Can I thank the Herne Hill Forum team, especially Alice and Yasha, for doing all the heavy lifting on organising this. We started organising this meeting, I think, towards the end of last year. It's taken that long, it's a lot involved. Not forgetting Rob the Vicar, that's not an instruction, that's Rob in the corner, it's his church, and thank you very much to him. And thanks to everyone who partook. We've got our Zoom audience at home, who hopefully are still there. We've been using their questions as well. And remember, next Thursday is voting day. Democracy is really fragile, so please use it or lose it. Thank you.
Thank you.